We're going to start our conversation with Swati Chaturvedi, co-founder and CEO of PurgeX. Swati, welcome. Great to see you here. Swati, you need to unmute your line. There we go.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Swati, tell us about PurgeX.
Okay.
How do you work with investors and entrepreneurs?
Yes, absolutely. So PurgeX is an investment marketplace where we connect startups with accredited investors. And our goal is to help startups raise funding online. As you know, it's really difficult for startups to raise funding, especially in the early phases. So our goal is to help there. We focus quite exclusively on deep technology companies. So those we define as companies that are founded on a scientific discovery or meaningful engineering innovation. And they span many sectors, including life sciences, energy and green technologies. Information technology is a very big sector for us. And then finally, space and food and ag. So those are the key sectors. How do we work with startups and investors? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. So the way it works is startups can register on PurgeX. They can create a profile. We do have a screening process whereby we make sure that the startup is ready to fundraise. We have a phone call with every company, and those that are screened in are then published on PurgeX. On the other hand, we have hundreds of investors that have registered on PurgeX at this time, I guess, starting to go into the thousands, who have registered on PurgeX. They are accredited investors. Their goal is to discover exciting new companies that they want to support. They register. We do screen all investors as well. Investors, once they're in, they can review the startup materials. And if they're interested, they can indicate an investment interest. And they can then invest directly.
Now, so, Swati, let's zero in on some things that are going to be helpful for our community. First and foremost, you talked about screening. So let's talk about what are you screening for? What does the startup need to have to pass your screening test, let's say?
Okay. So there's a lot of platforms out there, and everyone has a different philosophy. At PurgeX, we really focus only on companies that are really founded on meaningful innovation. So the number one screening criterion for us is what is your particular innovation? And so we have a lot of in-house expertise in all of these areas, and we dig into, when we have the phone call, we do dig quite deeply into specifically what was your innovation. We compare it to what we've seen before, what was already on the table, and what you built on top of that. So that's the number one criterion. The second criterion is we do need the team to be full-time. And most particularly, the CEO absolutely needs to be full-time. And finally, because we are not a broker, so we are not allowed to be negotiating terms. So we do require that the startup come in with at least one investor who's already negotiated terms in the current round. And they may have invested a small amount, but that's okay, but they should have negotiated the terms. And our requirement is that this one investor not be related to the entrepreneur, so not your mother or your brother, not friends, family so much, but a legitimate angel with two other portfolio companies. So those are our three criteria.
And within information technology, which is the area where we work, what are the trends that you're seeing in terms of where do you see innovation? What kind of, in our world, we see AI everywhere right now. And all the investors want AI. I mean, I'm a bit sick of it actually right now. But what are you seeing in your community?
Yes, so you're absolutely right. What was big data yesterday? The buzzword today is AI. But we are very careful. So it's not just okay to say, oh, we're an AI company. because we particularly screen for what is your particular innovation, right? Because data analytics is what most of AI is built on, and some bit of natural language processing and so on. Those things already exist. And so we are very keen that if you are using artificial intelligence, it should either be highly specialized, so as applicable to a specific sector. For example, we've had a company that uses artificial intelligence to select therapies for cancer patients, right? And the data that they're using is not just genomic data, but also RNA data. And so they are highly specialized. They really developed it far beyond what exists. We've had companies that are using artificial intelligence to map indoor spaces. And we were a little skeptical on that, but then we had a long conversation as to what your specific innovation is. And we came to the conclusion that this, in fact, is innovative. But we've also had AI or companies that have pitched us. You know, there was one company that helps interior decorators select the best, fixtures. That was not a good fit for us. We thought that, so they're really looking at some bit of machine vision. They are scanning a lot of data that exists out there and then understanding what would be the good fit for you. So I didn't think that that was truly innovative, just because, those kinds of things have existed and for a long time. So that's the kind of trend we see. Yes, AI is everywhere. But we zero in on what is your application and is it truly innovative.
And how about some examples of companies that you have funded through your process within the IT sector?
Okay, sure. So some of the companies, like I said, one of the companies was a company that was doing, sorry, just a moment. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I was entertaining. My daughter is quite sick today, and so I had to be with her. So some examples of companies. So one of the companies that we helped was they're including a software into chips that are then sent to OEMs like the Samsungs of the world, and which are included. So the idea there is it is an Internet of Things application, and those chips track every connected device in the home. And the idea there is that, can you understand what the user experience is, why those devices are failing, not working? Is it because of the device itself, or is it because of internet failures elsewhere or other failures in the systems themselves? So that was helpful. Another company that we're doing in information technology, so this is embedded software again. And the idea here is they're focused on gesture recognition. So the goal is that they want to make every device be able to recognize gestures. So today, gesture recognition is a computing-intensive process. It is really difficult to compute locally. A lot of the gesture recognition computing or recognitions actually happen in the cloud. So the idea is, can we reduce the footprint of the hardware and the software so that every tiny device can actually recognize gestures? And that's what they have done, is they've reduced the footprint of the hardware and the software so that it can be embedded on tiny chips. Every little device, including your tiny, Tiffany watches and so on, will be able to recognize gestures. It could be as simple as your hand movement. It could be based on touch, and so on. So that is an important trend as well that we're seeing, important applications. Those are two that come to mind immediately. Then I mentioned this drug development company, which is using artificial intelligence to develop therapies.
And talk a little bit about the types of investors who are part of your community.
So all of them are accredited investors. What that means is, according to the SEC standard,
No,
every
we're not
investor...
interested in knowing what, we know what accredited investors mean. We want to understand viscerally what kinds of people are we dealing with. We have a good feel for what kinds of people hang out in Angel List, what kinds of people hang out in PropelX. How would you describe them?
Yeah, so the people, so we have done a lot of demographic analysis, right? We certainly know the age groups are, and they're 45 plus, but we also know a lot about their education levels. So for example, on PropelX, 60% of individuals have master's degrees or more. 13% of individuals have PhDs or more. So they're very highly educated people. They tend to ask a lot of questions.
Are these people who have had experience as angel investors? Have they done this before? Do they have exits? What statistical data do you have on that?
Yes. So the people that actually invest, almost 100% of them have done this before. Okay. So, so we are an internet company, so we kind of attract all kinds. But that said, most people are watchers, and the 10% of the people who've actually pulled the trigger, they have a very strong correlation with offline angel investment portfolios. So they tend to have done it before. In terms of exit, we haven't specifically asked, have you had exits before? But because we know that they're professional angels offline, our understanding is that they kind of know how this process works, they're comfortable with it, they understand the holding periods and so on.
Yeah, your business is still relatively new, so you haven't seen a lot of exits.
Yes, not yet.
One thing that I observe is that we are in 2017, and tons of stuff have already been built. And nowadays, if you look at the B2B IT world, there aren't so many wide open opportunities to build these hyper fast, hyper scalable, really large companies, which has been kind of like the general way angel investment has happened, right? Angels invest, and they invest into rounds, they invest in businesses that then get follow-on VC funding and go on to build these very large companies. That's been the hypothesis. Of course, most of these investments fail. But the truth is that's what people have been looking for. The angels have operated as feeders into VCs, and the VCs are looking for these very very large opportunities, hyper growth, hyper scalable businesses. But today where we are, there are many, many niche opportunities. Some of these businesses kind of don't fit that parameter, that set of parameters that VCs are looking for. Some of these businesses need to be built for very small amounts of capital, maybe $1 to $2 million, and sold for $10 to $15 million. Is there appetite in your community for this type of investment? And what about a lot smaller, even like invest $250,000 to $500,000 and sell for $5 to $10 million?
Yeah, so that I would agree that has been the case, that people look for these mega opportunities. But I'm not sure that angels are of that mindset as well. In fact, professional angels and angel groups tend to avoid these mega opportunities where they face, future venture capital competition. And so that is why something like, for example, medical devices, angel investors, which it is not with the venture community, because the expectation is that the exits will be small. They will be in the 15, 20, 30 million range, and that I think is significant. And
that may be true in medical devices. In IT, the expectations are very much that they're going to be feeders into large VCs, and VCs are going to be looking for large-scale opportunities. So I think I'm pretty sure the dynamics of different industry angel communities are different. And you're absolutely right, probably when it comes to medical devices, we don't do medical devices, we don't do pharma, we only do IT, where we are seeing some angels or some, kind of angel come acceleration groups that are focusing, and I know a group that just does AI investments, only invest small amounts of money, takes a lot of equity, and expects that there will be no VC involved. They're going to go straight to an exit. So this kind of things are starting to happen now. I think the angels are realizing that, you know, if you get into a company that is that, let's say it's a good company, you get into a company, it's a good company, but then they feed into the unicorn mania and raise, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the angel gets diluted like crazy. And you know, weighed down under huge amounts of liquidation preferences, make no money whatsoever. Yeah. So I can imagine that, you know, sophisticated angels are not aware of these things. What are your feelings? What are you hearing in your community?
Oh, they are, and everyone's very cautious about how much venture capital money will you need after this, right? So I think they totally are. But again, I feel like people need to get comfortable with the idea. Look, if you're not going to invest in a company that needs venture capital, or if you're specifically looking for a company that does not need future venture money, then the expectation should be that this exit will be small, and you should be comfortable with that. I think people have not come to terms with that. You know, the funny thing is they look for, but they don't want you to raise venture money, and that becomes really hard to reconcile. So I would agree. I think there needs to be some education there. And the more we can do to educate angels, I think that's helpful. And so if that's okay, I'd love for you to be able to educate them, and we can chat more about that.
So tell us about types of ideas your investors are looking for that, you know, that within the IT space that would be helpful for us to look into.
So there is a big trend of combining hardware with software, right? So robotics is a trend. It is growing. I think robotics is still hard because it is hardware. But again, what is specific to PurgeX, you know, is we do need like some specific innovation.
So in terms of when it comes to IT and specific innovation, would you, do you consider, you know, like we were talking about niches, right? There are niches that are open, wide opportunities are not as easily open right now, given where we are in the history of technology. So let's say there is a, you know, a particular sector of cloud computing, and within that, there are specific niche markets that are open where there is a certain amount of innovation that people apply to that. Is that considered innovation in your terminology, or are you looking for something far more extensive when it comes to original innovation?
Yeah, so again, it will depend on that particular instance. But yes, we've had companies that are innovating in the sphere of cloud computing. So for example, we had this company that it's really a containerization for migration of data in the cloud. And they had some particular innovations around that particular idea. And so we did get them on board. We've had other companies that look at security in the cloud, for example. So security is, by the way, just another important trend. Then we had companies which uses artificial intelligence to monitor the performance. And, you know, if you look at things like app dynamics and so on, currently they tell you what's going on, and then you have to manually take action. So the next step is, can you automatically correct the system, right? And so we've had those companies as well. So I think absolutely we consider that to be innovation. It is innovation, but yeah, to confirm that there is that trend, and we do see that. Samana, I'm sure. Can you just hold on? I feel like I'm going to run out of power. If I may just get the power cord, if you don't mind for a minute.
Okay, sure. You know, one of the observations that I have about AI trends, and a lot of people who are in the know in the industry share this observation, is that the basic AI technologies, whether it's natural language processing, whether it's machine learning algorithms and so forth, are going to become commoditized. And there are large companies, Microsoft, IBM, Google, they're all working on trying to commoditize and kind of make these platforms very easily available and very, usable by people who have domain knowledge in specific domains, so that you can apply AI to solve problems within those specific domains. And people who are heavily investing in AI right now are looking for people who are domain experts, who are applying that domain knowledge using some of these AI technologies, some off-the-shelf AI technologies even, and creating new solutions. So the reason I bring this up is that the nature of innovation is changing, and the point at which innovation kicks in gear is changing, is evolving. So, so that actually brings questions, Swati, for your investor base, is that how would they view domain knowledge as the key unfair advantage in a venture, in an AI venture, but the real advantage is not AI algorithms, it is the domain knowledge. And I think those are the companies that are going to be valuable companies, as opposed to people who reinvent the wheel every time on inventing AI algorithms.
Absolutely. So that is for us key. So you were asking, how do you screen AI companies? So one of our screening criteria is what is, and I guess this is not 100% the screening criteria, but one of the things we do focus on is what is the application, and do you have expertise in that particular industry? And I think investors do look for that kind of expertise. It is not okay to just be a programmer, who's very generic. You need to have expertise in that kind of industry, especially in, you need to understand the business. So sales, in other words, you need to have a team that knows the industry well enough to sell the solution to the relevant people.
And last question, what about stage? What are you looking for? Are you looking for idea? Are you looking for customers? Are you looking for paying customers? What stage is the most comfortable stage for you?
Yes, and so this is a very important question, especially for information technology companies. So with other companies, it's okay if you haven't done customer development. But with information technology companies, because they don't need as much capital to get started, and so therefore it is imperative that you should have done customer development in information technology. And what we are seeing is that the companies that are successful on PurgeX have customers, and preferably paying customers. So for example, the company I was telling you about that embeds their software into chips that are then sold or manufactured and sold by OEMs, they had some of the biggest names as paying customers, and they had bootstrapped it so far, and they had gotten the likes of the Googles of the world to become paying customers. So I think that was just a sign, and the companies that don't have paying customers in information technology, it is hard, I think, to raise funding.
This is the state of the union right now. You have to bootstrap for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 3 years to actually get to paying customers before angel investors are going to invest in you. And that's just how the industry is today. There's no going around that fact.
No, unfortunately. And we had...
All right, Swati, I know you have... yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and just one more example, even companies that get venture funded, I think VCs are also looking for paying customers now. So we had a company, for example, that does video analytics, right? And their innovation is that they're able to recognize faces in a crowd, which I think is very, very important. And so they had bootstrapped it. They had $3 million in sales, and they were looking for their first angel funding. So they did get the angel round very quickly, and then they also raised the Series A fairly rapidly. But that's a lot of sales for a small company, and they had been bootstrapping for a while.
Well, in our program, the philosophy is bootstrap first, raise money later. So we have tons of companies, both case studies as well as companies in our portfolio that have bootstrapped $2, $3, $4 million in revenue, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and we encourage that because that puts the negotiating power in their hands as opposed to going with begging bowls to investors, and we tend to advise them to try to avoid that state. And of course, we have nonetheless, because there is this myth in the industry where entrepreneurs think that they immediately need to raise funding, entrepreneurship equals funding, and they ignore all the signals that that is no longer the case, that no one is going to fund them, and they're going to just waste their time going with a begging bowl to VCs and to angels. And they still don't get it, and they still don't listen, and they waste a lot of time and eventually actually go out of business. If you waste your time chasing investors at the cost of chasing customers, you're going to go out of business. And that is just the reality that you have to come to terms with. So on that note, Swati, I will let you go because I know you have a sick child at home. So I appreciate that you participated today with all that complexity. So happy juggling.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye. Nice to be here.
Good to see you.